Wow, the truth has finally been revealed. Although Eugene Fitzherbert may have thought for his entire life that he was all alone in the world, the truth was that very similarly to his wife Rapunzel, he had been a lost prince. With this huge revelation for Eugene's lineage in the season 2 finale of Tangled the Series, throughout this video, I'm going to finally fully explain who Eugene's parents were, and by the end you'll understand why they let him be raised as an orphan. Hello, I'm Isaac from Wotso Videos, where we discuss fun topics for fun people. On my channel, I focus on spreading magic by examining Disney films, so if you are new here, consider subscribing. For most of Eugene's childhood, he came into his own within an orphanage somewhere in the world where he felt lonely and lost. He grew up thinking he had no one, and that he only existed as an outcast, and that no one could love him. But he worked to choose to believe someone who loved him was out there. To provide himself hope, he used to believe his parents were out exploring the world and were just working to reach him again.
I used to imagine they were swashbuckling explorers searching the world for treasure, and once they found it, they'd come back and get me.
As he longed for a connection with the parents he never knew, he also grew to cherish the tales of Flanagan Ryder. Every night, Eugene would read the stories of the rich and dashing swashbuckler to all of the children in the orphanage.
He had enough money to do anything that he wanted to do. He could go anywhere that he wanted to go. And for a kid with nothing, I don't know, it just seemed like the better option.
Eventually, after struggling for what he felt was long enough to obtain the riches that he believed his family and his fictional hero possessed, he decided to become a rogue and a thief with his best friend Arnwaldo Schnitz. But soon enough, they would become famous under their new titles, Lance Strongbow and Flynn Rider. Together, these two friends, who were close as brothers, traveled the world in search of wealth, became experts in their deceitful ways, and built up an infamous reputation, leading to them even working with some of the underworld's most successful crime bosses. Eugene had discovered a place for himself in the world, but the longer he followed his ambition for crime and became more detached from those around him, his dreams became more focused on solidarity, money, and freedom, and less on the relationships in his life. After Eugene fell in love with Princess Rapunzel, though, his entire life changed. He gave up his pursuit of crimes, committed to loving her, and was ready to settle down. But of course, neither Rapunzel or Eugene's adventures were over just yet. Rapunzel was drawn out of her home of Corona by mysterious black rocks, so a faithful Eugene forged ahead with the love of his life, ready to help her discover her destiny, even though he would eventually realize he would be discovering his own destiny as well. At the end of the long, treacherous journey to the place they were led, called the Dark Kingdom, Eugene would finally find out that he was never truly alone growing up. His father had been out there, had been acting as a hero, and had always done his best to keep watch over him.
I won't fight you. You are my son.
The sole protector of the Dark Kingdom, and the man who confessed to be Eugene's father, was known as King Edmund, and it turned out that for most of Eugene's life, he had been watched over by his father's ravens so that Edmund would know that his son was safe.
My ravens have been following you ever since you left.
After a while, though, the ravens lost track of Eugene, but they would retrieve the wanted posters of the famous Flynn Rider to show Edmund that his son was still alive. As this father and son connected again in the Dark Kingdom, the similarities between these two weren't extremely clear at first. They didn't share the same hair color or have the same build or the same nose, but you could see it in their eyes. Eugene and Edmund shared the same all-telling and emotional eyes. And in addition to those eyes, they also both had the smooth ability to summon their extremely persuasive gaze, had a hardened spirit within them, and they both confessed that they were willing to remain dedicated to those they cared for. Eugene was committed to protecting, supporting, and having faith in Rapunzel, while Edmund bore the burden his family had taken on for generations. And it was this duty King Edmund possessed that played into the destruction of Eugene's family. Long ago, a mystical event in the heavens sent both a drop of sunlight and moonlight to the earth. This moonlight formed a single seductive opal stone, which man soon discovered could destroy any and all who would seek to possess it. Over many centuries, the opal formed defenses for itself, and out of those structures, a kingdom was born, the Dark Kingdom. Generations of Eugene's bloodline ruled and fought to defend the Moonstone in that kingdom to protect the world from the Opal's limitless power to harness death and destruction. Their task was not taken lightly. Even beyond the grave, those warriors and rulers would reside in the statues constructed to honor them to watch over the Moonstone. The last of the Dark Kings, Edmund, was no different in his resolve to defend the Moonstone when he assumed the throne. He embraced the destiny of his ancestors to devote himself to keep the Moonstone's power at bay. But soon after the birth of his son Eugene, he became tired of the damage the Moonstone caused upon the world.
I can't stand this anymore. This stone has destroyed too many lives.
King Edmund took action and attempted to stop the Moonstone once and for all by eradicating it from the world. But that only led to the Dark Kingdom facing even more devastating destruction and loss of life. In hopes of stopping the Moonstone for the world, Edmund's actions led him to cause a heartbreaking death.
Not everyone was so fortunate. Your mother.
The Moonstone's powerful blast had killed Eugene's mother. So after Edmund experienced this disaster and knew the Moonstone would only keep ravaging the world, which would put the lives of his people at risk, he decides he must send everyone away.
Everyone must leave!
Your Majesty.
I said everyone.
All of the citizens within the Dark Kingdom were sent off into the world so they could live far from where they were born to ensure they would remain safe. And this even included King Edmund's son. Eugene was taken away by a servant woman and was eventually placed into an orphanage where he would grow up believing he had no one in his life to love him, while his father would spend the next 25 years loving Eugene with every part of himself. The only way Edmund could do that, though, and fulfill his destiny as the guardian of the Moonstone, was by remaining the sole warrior in the Dark Kingdom. There, he waited to do whatever it would take to keep the stone's magic out of the wrong hands.
May this place and the cursed power that lies within it be forever wiped from existence.
Because of Rapunzel, though, who was the sun drop and was said to have the power to neutralize the Moonstone, Eugene did of course return to the Dark Kingdom, where he learned this entire story, which rattled him to the core. Eugene felt like he had finally begun to figure out his life since he had met Rapunzel. He had evolved and changed and learned to figure out how to move past his insecurities and his wrongdoings. Now that he understood where he came from, though, the purpose he had derived for himself seemed to be shattered. The memories, love, and hope he had now seemed like they should be cast aside for the destiny his bloodline had been called to take action upon. The way King Edmund framed the responsibility almost makes Eugene feel like nothing mattered until he reached his family's home. And this discrepancy with who he had come to believe he was versus what he was being called to be by his father makes Eugene feel like he doesn't understand who he is again. But the truth was clear. Eugene had been sent away after the death of his mother in hopes of protecting him, and in those 25 years after he left, he grew into a man who had made mistakes but had learned to have faith in and support those he loved. That lonely orphan had become a man, not knowing that there was more to him than he ever knew. His parents hadn't been exploring and adventuring around the world for riches, they had taken part in something much more grand than that. Eugene was a descendant of a bloodline who were committed to protecting the world from the Moonstone that could channel death and destruction. They were a people who were fierce, dedicated, noble, and were also rulers. Eugene was the son of the king and queen of the Dark Kingdom, making Eugene, for most of his life, the lost Dark Prince. But now I'd love to hear your thoughts. Can you believe Eugene actually is a royal? I was ecstatic to see the backstory of Eugene finally being explored in this phenomenal show, especially after I started to see people theorizing that this was his origin all along. But let me know what you think in the comments, along with any other ideas you have for future videos. To see me talk about Tangled the series, including my videos on Cassandra and her saga, or more Disney Channel themed videos like my video on the complete backstory of Dr. Doofenshmirtz, you can find those videos on those topics in the description. If you'd like to continue to see more magical discussions like this one, then don't forget to click that subscribe button and the beautiful bell if you're new, and be sure to follow me on Instagram at Wotso Videos. Thank you to my wonderful patrons over on Patreon who are amazing supporters of my videos, and as always, thanks for watching and have a magical day.